Remember that white Ferrari Testarossa cruising through Miami at sunset? It wasn't the only hero car from your favorite 80s shows that vanished after the cameras stopped rolling. Today, we're tracking down 10 more legendary movie and TV cars that disappeared for decades and the incredible stories of how they turned up in the most unexpected places. Let's get into it. Number 10. The Miami Vice Ferrari Testarossa. 1986 Universal Studios used a white Ferrari Testarossas for Miami Vice's 1986 to 1989 seasons. And after the show wrapped, both cars disappeared into private collections without any public record of where they went. The primary hero car that Don Johnson actually drove during most close-up scenes vanished completely, until a Miami collector found it in a Pennsylvania garage in 2014. Still wearing its original white paint, but missing the iconic Barani wheels and side mirrors, the car had been owned by a dentist who bought it at a studio auction in 1990 and drove it regularly for 15 years before parking it when the clutch failed, never realizing he owned one of the most famous TV cars in history. Authentication came through production records showing this specific chassis number had been modified with reinforced suspension for camera car work, plus unique interior wear patterns that matched specific episodes frame by frame. The collector paid $1.80, $8 million for the car and spent another $200,000, returning it to screen-accurate condition, including sourcing the correct Ferrari cap. For Nat Crockett used to call Tubbs during chase scenes. What makes this discovery special is how the car survived 25 years of regular driving and neglect without being destroyed, because most people would have modified or restored it beyond recognition. This Testarossa now appears at 80s nostalgia events where grown men tear up remembering Friday nights watching Miami Vice with their dads, proving that TV cars can hit just as hard emotionally as any movie vehicle. Number 9. The Columbo. Peugeot 4003195 convertible. Universal used one beat-up 1959 Peugeot 4003 Cabriolet for the entire run of Columbo from 1968 to 2003, and after Peter Falk's final appearance, the car disappeared into storage at Universal Studios. The hero car sat forgotten in a warehouse corner for nearly a decade until a studio archivist found it in 2012, buried under boxes of old scripts and covered in dust, still wearing its dented fenders and that famous mismatched paint. By the time Universal authenticated it, the Peugeot was in rough mechanical shape with a seized engine and rotted convertible top, but every dent and scratch matched production. Photos from 35 years of filming. Universal partnered with a Peugeot specialist to restore the mechanical components while preserving every cosmetic imperfection that made Columbo's car so memorable. Spending $75,000 to make it drivable again without making it look restored. The car now lives at the Peterson Automotive Museum in Los Angeles, where mystery fans line up to see the actual vehicle that carried Lieutenant Colo to solve murders for over 3 decades. What saved this car was pure luck and Universal's terrible warehouse organization, because if someone had cleaned that storage area 5 years earlier, the Peugeot would have been scrapped as worthless junk. The wild part is how this car became more famous than the actual Peugeot 4003 model ever was in America, because most people only know this car exists because a rumpled detective drove it on TV. Number 8. The Fall Guy GMC Sierra Grande. 1981 20th Century Fox used 3 identical 1981 GMC Sierra Grande pickups for the Fall Guy TV series, and after the show ended in 1986, all 3 trucks disappeared into the automotive void. The primary hero truck that Lee Major drove during most episodes turned up in 2009 at a Tennessee estate sale, painted Prima gray and sitting on blocks with the engine removed and the custom roll bar cut off. A Fall Guy fan recognized it from specific cab damage visible in old episodes, including a unique dent in the driver's door from a Season 2 stunt that went wrong. The new owner paid just $3,500 for what looked like a rusted-out work truck, then spent 3 years authenticating it. Through production records and interviews with the original stunt coordinator who remembered that specific door dent, restoration cost over $85,000 because every custom part had to be recreated, including the famous diamond plate bed toolbox and the exact CB radio setup that Colt Severs used to stay in touch with Jody Banks. This truck now appears at TV car shows and 80s conventions where middle-aged fans who grew up watching Saturday morning action shows finally get to see the real vehicle that made them want to become stuntmen. The tragedy of Fall Guy trucks is that Fox kept 0 records about what happened to them after production wrapped, which is why authenticating screen-used vehicles has become such detective work. If this truck hadn't ended up at that specific estate sale where a knowledgeable fan saw it, nobody would ever know it survived, and it probably would have been scrapped for parts years ago. Number 7. The Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry, Dodge Charger. 1969 20th Century Fox destroyed for 1969 Dodge Chargers, making the 1974 cult classic Dirty Mary Crazy Larry, and everyone assumed all the hero cars got wrecked during filming or scrapped afterward. The primary Charger that Peter Fonda drove during the highway chase scenes turned up in 2016 in an Oregon barn, painted flat black and sitting on jack stands with the 440 Magnum engine removed. A movie car collector recognized it from unique fender modifications made for camera mounts, plus a distinctive roll cage that appeared in close-up shots during the famous Walnut Grove chase. The car had been sold at a studio auction in 1975 to a drag racer who pulled the engine for another project, then parked the shell and forgot about it for 40 years. Authentication took 2 years and required tracking down the original stunt coordinator's notes, which listed this specific VIN number as the hero car that survived filming. The new owner spent $120,000 rebuilding it to screen-accurate condition, including sourcing a period-correct 440 Magno and recreating the exact side exhaust, a system that defined the car's sound in the movie. This Charger represents everything cool about 70s car movies back when studios actually destroyed real muscle cars instead of using CGI and seeing it restored. It feels like recovering a piece of automotive history that nobody thought still existed. The car now shows up at Moper events where fans who remember seeing Dirty Mary and Drive in theaters can finally touch the actual Charger that made them fall in love with muscle cars in the first place. Number 6. The two-lane blacktop 55 Chevy 1971. Universal built to identical 1955 Chevy 150 sedans for the 1971 street racing classic two-lane blacktop, and after filming Wrapped, both cars vanished without any studio records of where they went. The hero car that James Taylor and Dennis Wilson actually drove during most scenes disappeared for 45 years, until a California hot rod builder found it in a Nevada junkyard in 2016. Stripped of its engine and sitting in the dirt with faded primer gray paint, he recognized it from unique chassis modifications made for the movie's racing scenes, including a custom four-link rear suspension that didn't appear on any regular 55 Chevy build. The car was so far gone that only the body shell and frame rails were salvageable, but the builder spent $200,000 recreating it exactly as it appeared in the film, including the famous 454 big block Chevy engine and my 4-speed transmission. What makes this discovery remarkable is how close the car came to being crushed for scrap metal, because the junkyard owner was cleaning out that section the following week and everything was headed to the crusher. This 55 now lives in a private collection and rarely gets shown because the owner understands how special it is, representing the peak of American street racing culture before emissions controls and safety regulations changed everything. The film was a box office failure in 1971, which is probably why Universal didn't bother tracking these cars or preserving them, but it became a cult classic over the decades, making this 55 Chevy one of the most sought-after movie cars among serious collectors who understand its cultural significance. If you're loving these lost and found stories, hit that like button right now and drop a comment telling me which TV car you remember from your childhood. Make sure you're subscribed and click that notification bell so you never miss when we drop our next video. These cars are living proof that the best era of television and movies is behind us and every survivor deserves to be celebrated. Now, let's finish this list with 4 more incredible discoveries. Number 5. The Beverly Hills Cop Mercedes 4550 6.9 1976. Paramount Pictures used one 1976 Mercedes 4550 L 6.9 for the scene where Axel Foley stuffs bananas in the tailpipe outside Victor Maitland's mansion, and after filming Wrapped in 1984, the car disappeared into private ownership with no studio records. The hero Mercedes turned up in 2013 at a German car specialist shop in Arizona, brought in for routine maintenance by an owner who had no idea what he was driving. The shop owner recognized it from specific modifications visible in the movie, including a reinforced rear bumper that was installed for the banana tailpipe scene and unique interior wear patterns that matched production photos. The original owner had bought it at a Paramount studio auction in 1985 and drove it as his daily car for 28 years, accumulating over 300,000 mi, and never connecting it to the Eddie Murphy movie he'd seen in theaters. Authentication came through Paramount production notes that listed this exact VIN number as the picture car used for all the mansion exterior scenes. The new owner paid $45,000 for it and spent another $30,000 restoring it to screen-accurate condition, while keeping the high mileage as proof of its incredible survivor story. This Mercedes now appears at 80s movie car events where fans line up to recreate the famous banana and tailpipe scene for photos, proving that even minor movie moments can make a car legendary if the film is iconic enough. What saved this car was an owner who simply drove and maintained it properly for decades, never knowing he owned a piece of comedy movie history that would eventually be worth 10 times what he paid for it. Number 4. The Rockford Files Pontiac Firebird 1974 Esprit. Universal used multiple 1974 Pontiac Firebird as Esprit during the Rockford Files 6-season run, and after the show ended in 1980, most got sold off as regular used cars or scrapped. The primary hero car that James Garner drove during the first 3 seasons vanished completely, until a Rockford Files fan found it in 2008 at a Southern California toy yard scheduled to be crushed for scrap metal the following week. He recognized it from specific body damage visible in early episodes, including a unique dent in the passenger door from a season 1 stunt that was never repaired because it didn't show on camera. The car was in terrible shape with a blown engine, missing interior, and decades of neglect, but the VIN number matched Universal production records perfectly. The new owner spent $95,000 restoring it to screen-accurate condition, including sourcing the correct Sierra Gold paint and the specific Pontiac rally wheels that Rockford used to chase down bad guys across Los Angeles. This Firebird now lives in a private collection and appears at TV car shows where fans who grew up watching Jim Rockford work cases from his Malibu trailer finally get to see the actual car that made them love detective shows. The wild part is how many tribute Rockford Firebirds exist compared to actual screen used cars, because every gold 74 spree with a white interior gets called the Rockford car at Pontiac shows across America. This particular Firebird survived purely through timing and one fan's obsession, because if he'd shown up at that toy yard 1 week later, the car would have been crushed and lost forever and nobody would have known the difference. Number 3. The Bullitt Dodge Charger RT 1968. Wernan Brothers used a black 1968 Dodge Charger RTS for the bad guys and Bullitt's legendary chase scene, and while everyone obsesses over the Mustang, both Chargers disappeared after filming wrapped in 1968. The primary villain car that got the most screen time turned up in 2002 in a Los Angeles wrecking yard, partially crushed and missing the engine and transmission. A Mopar collector recognized it from unique modifications made for the chase scene, including reinforced door panels for camera mounts and a roll cage that appeared in specific crash sequences. The car was so destroyed that only the cowl, VIN tag, and some frame sections were salvageable, but the new owner spent $175,000 rebuilding it using period-correct parts and original production blueprints. What makes this Charger special is the documentation, proving it performed the famous downhill jumps through San Francisco streets, which automotive historians consider some of the most important stunt work in cinema history. The problem with Bullitt Chargers is that Warner Brothers kept 0 records about which car did what stunts, so authentication required frame-by-frame film analysis and interviews with surviving stunt drivers. This Charger now shows up at events and movie car shows where it finally gets the recognition it deserves instead of playing second fiddle to the more famous Mustang. The tragic part is how close this car came to being lost forever, because if that collector hadn't visited that specific wrecking yard on that specific day, the remaining pieces would have been scrapped within weeks and this piece of movie history would have disappeared completely. Number 2. The Terminator police car, 1977 Plymouth Fury. Orion Pictures used multiple 1977 Plymouth Fury police cars for the 1984 Terminator movie, and after filming wrapped, most got returned to the LAPD or sold at auction. The hero car that the T800 steals and drives through Los Angeles turned up in 2011 at a police vehicle auction in Arizona, still painted in LAPD colors, but with no connection to its movie history. A Terminator fan recognized it from specific damage visible in the film, including a unique dent in the driver's door from the scene where Arnold crashes through a fence at the police station. The car had been used as an actual patrol car in Arizona after filming, which explains the 250,000 miles on the odometer and the complete lack of any movie-related documentation. Authentication came through production notes that listed this exact unit number as the picture car used for all the driving scenes with Arnold Schwarzenegger. The new owner paid just $4,500 at auction and spent another $35,000 restoring it to screen-accurate condition, including recreating the correct spotlight and radio equipment that appeared in the movie. This Fury now appears at sci-fi conventions and 80s movie events where Terminator fans treat it like a holy relic from a film that defined action movies for a generation. What saved this car was pure coincidence and one fan's knowledge of obscure movie details, because without that specific door dent being visible in the film, there would have been no way to authenticate it among hundreds of identical Plymouth Fury police cars. The fact that this car spent 27 years as a working patrol car before being rediscovered makes it one of the most unlikely survivor stories in movie car history. Number 1. The Cannonball Run Lamborghini 1979 Golden Harvest Productions rented one 1979 Lamborghini Countach LP 400s for the 1981 Cannonball Run movie, and after filming wrapped, the car went back to its owner and disappeared from public view for over 30 years. The hero Countach that Adrian Barao and Tara Buckman drove during the legendary opening race sequence turned up in 2015 at a Dubai exotic car dealership, painted black and with no mention of its movie history. A Cannonball Run enthusiast recognized it from unique modifications visible in the film, including custom brake vents and a specific VIN number that appeared in production photographs. The car had changed owners 7 times since 1981, passing through collections in California, Texas, and eventually the Middle East, with nobody connecting it to the movie because the original red paint had been changed in 1987. Authentication required tracking down the original rental, an agreement and interviewing the special effects coordinator who remembered installing the custom camera mounts that left specific marks on the chassis. The new owner paid $420,000 for it and spent another $80,000 returning it to screen-accurate condition, including the correct Rosso red paint and recreating the CB radio equipment used in the film. This Countach represents the peak of 80s excess and the golden age of outlaw racing movies, and seeing it restored brings back memories of an era when movie cars were real exotic machines instead of CGI creations. What that makes this discovery remarkable is how the car survived multiple owners and continents without being wrecked or modified beyond recognition, because counts from this era are notoriously difficult to maintain and most have been crashed, rebuilt, or heavily modified. This particular Lamborghini now lives in a climate-controlled facility and appears at major automotive events where 3 generations of car enthusiasts line up to see the actual Countach that made them fall in love with wedge-shaped Italian supercars in the first place. 10 more legendary movie and TV cars that vanished after filming and somehow survived against all odds, from police impound lots to overseas dealerships. These discoveries prove that automotive history is still being written every day. Hit that subscribe button so you catch our next video, and thanks for watching.